What's up, 0xEars? How you doing this evening? Or actually, what time is it there for you? Like afternoon?
Hello, Jerry. Yes, it's afternoon where I am. I'm looking out my window. I can see the mountains. I can see the Alps, and I'm reflecting on my history. I'm reflecting on all things Lunk and how I ended up here. And I'm glad that I'm going to have the opportunity to talk about my story here on the podcast, episode 5, uninterrupted for once. So thank you for inviting me on.
Yeah, so that's great for because that's basically what the introduction is going to be. So why don't you start at the beginning?
Yeah, man. Well, I suppose we can go back as far as I like. So let's say, I think we all knew about Bitcoin. We all knew about crypto back in 2012, back in 2011, university, when people were buying and selling drugs, and they were trading using Bitcoin to buy weed, things like that. And I remember thinking of my mother's advice, don't do that. Drugs are bad. So by taking that advice, I missed the opportunity to become a multi-billionaire. And I think we all did. So that was actually the worst piece of advice anybody was ever given. So I ignored Bitcoin completely for about 5 years. And then in 2017, I finally pulled the trigger as a dumb retail investor, buying some Ethereum, buying some Litecoin, going on random swap sites, swapping my tokens, swapping my coins. I bought a bunch of random Bitcoin forks, things like Vertcoin. You can look up that chart, and you'll notice where I was euphoric, and you'll notice where I lost it all. It looks like the Burj Khalifa, if you're familiar with that particular tower in the Middle East. So that's the chart pattern. And then from 2017, I lost a lot of money, and paper gains, right? People talk about making money in crypto. You don't really make the money until you sell. I had a lot of paper gains that I round tripped, that I quit again because I thought this is useless. And then in 2020, I came back, and there was the biggest casino I've ever seen. It was the Binance. Binance had exploded. DeFi summer had happened. All of this craziness. So I said, "All right, let's have another go. Let's see if we can make some money and sell this time." And this is just generally how it goes, I think, for most people. The first cycle they get wrecked. The second cycle they make some money, and then hopefully the next cycle I transcend and become some sort of a guru. Anyway, so back to the point. 2020, I'm researching what coins to buy, what tokens to buy, and I thought, who are reliable sources here? Not many. There's a lot of YouTubers. The open mouth thing wasn't as prolific just yet. So like guys who are like shocked, going like, "Holy shit! Watch this entire video. It's gonna blow your mind." And nothing being said. That hadn't come around just yet. But Masari were around. They were making some good suggestions, some good advice. So I sat there and I read the Masari report for 2021, and I said, I'm gonna tally up which tokens each of these people have bought, and I'm gonna make a chart. They just said what their portfolios were, and so I read through those, and I said, Luna comes up a few times. Let's have a look at Luna. And then I saw some interviews with a man called Do Kwon on YouTube, and he was such a persuasive speaker and such an inspirational founder that I went and bought some. And I bought some Luna under $1, like sort of 70 to 80 cents, something like that. And I kept buying in until like $7. So my average is somewhere around, I don't know, $3 or $4 at that point. And I put in like more than I wanted to lose, for sure. Followed that, like obviously bought other tokens, which didn't do as well, but this was the moonshot, man, as we all know. Sold a bunch of that around $50, which was sacrilege. That was like disgusting. Like how dare you? You couldn't say you sold. It's the same as the Lunk stuff now. Like if you say you sold, you get crucified, and that's a sign of a good cult. A good cult is a good blockchain. And your holders are all like bag holders. That it's actually like a sin to sell. So selling $50 or so, it went up to 120, as we all know, and then in 2 days it went to zero. During those 2 days, I was extremely fucking stressed because I had around, I don't know, way too much UST, like low to mid six figures of UST. And I sat there and I looked at the charts, and went to bed one night I'd kind of missed my opportunity to sell. I trusted Do Kwon too much. I trusted the people who were advising me too much, like Crypto Susanna. I trusted Lunk Dao too much, and Lunk Dao tricked me, and I didn't sell my UST on that first day, but I should have. And what happened was it went down to about 70 cents on Binance, the UST, and at that point they closed the market. In effect, they literally closed the market because the buy side on the order book was empty, and I was just sitting there like, holy fuck, I've just lost a stupid amount of cash, and it's all because of Crypto Susanna. It's all because of Crypto Susanna and because of Lunk Dao. And I woke up the next morning, and obviously Do Kwon had fired his shot. Him and whoever else were in that war room had given it their go. It got back to 93 cents. And I said, thank you, Hare Krishna, Vishnu. Thank you, Muhammad, Jesus, all of the gods of every single religion ever conceived. I'm going to sell now. Thank you. So I took that haircut. And that speaks a little bit to the psychology of stablecoins. I can't tell you what else I was doing because that would kind of semi-dox me. However, I have been working in crypto as well. And until about it must have been halfway through 2022, Crypto Susanna got in touch again. And she said, hey, we're setting up this thing over in Luxembourg. Do you want to be a part of it? We're going to basically get paid to FUD and to cause chaos on the blockchain and Lunk. So I didn't have a job at the time, and I'd lost all my money I'd taken a massive haircut on Luna. So I said, sure, I want that job stability. So I took the job with Crypto Susanna, and I've been fudding Lunk ever since.
Well, interesting. So I'm catching a little bit of sarcasm in that, but I think our first topic is the future of Lunk, because I know in our DMs you were mentioning that would be a good topic to talk about, because, and that's typically a question I ask people, like, what do you think moving forward, what Lunk can achieve? So what do you think about the future of Lunk?
Yeah, it's a good topic because I think a lot of people don't think past next week, next month, and sort of everybody rallies behind the specific thing happening right now. So right now, we must achieve parity with Luna V2, and then we'll all be successful because some apps will come across and they'll build things on Lunk, which I think is short-sighted if you look at the state of apps generally across Cosmos and on Luna as well. It's shit. There's actually not very much interesting stuff happening. Even right now, the most interesting thing happening on Luna V2 by a country mile is Ryan Lion creating a scam token called the Lion DAO, and sort of pumping that and seeing how he can get interoperability with other apps that exist, and sort of that's just pure community initiative. And so it's I think venerating devs too much is a mistake. You need to have some kind of an idea of how you're gonna succeed. And the best way to get an idea of how you're going to succeed with Lunk is to look at other successful blockchains and what they've done, and what worked and what didn't. The future of Lunk is pretty difficult to say because it's such a unique situation where it's like a community-run chain in theory, but what that actually means is there's no team, there's no particular strategy, very hard to coordinate, can't move very fast. So what you have, in effect, is a startup with which can't move quickly, which is kind of a very difficult place to start. I think if you look at any particular startup, which is what all layer ones are, just startups. At this stage, there's very few. Ethereum has kind of transcended that sort of stage, but most of them you can treat as a pure startup. And startups need to have a period of unsustainable growth, expenditure. They need to spend quite a bit at the beginning in order to grow, capture their users and whatever the users are. And at that point, achieve some kind of sustainability or die. So most of the time, they need to either raise funds because they have no capital. In our case, we have a ton of capital, but a ton of tokens trapped in different pools and places. And our customers aren't actually people who use the apps that would be built on top of Lunk. The customers of the layer one are the application teams themselves. And the best layer one blockchains are the ones that understand that, and they act as producers, like in the same way that Activision produces a video game and gets them their audience. The best layer one blockchains produce applications that are built on top. So the period of unsustainable growth is funding things like hackathons. It's getting the right teams in. It's very difficult. Like if you just sit and wait, like we've seen so far, what have we had built on Lunk? A series of scam tokens, like just pure grifters, and it's very difficult to see how this improves. The way it improves is some sort of coordinated attempt to run some kind of supervised hackathon and bring in people who are actually going to be able to distinguish what a good team and what a good project looks like. So the future of Lunk, to me, we've kind of cut into a very specific idea. Is one, take the Oracle pool, right? The Oracle pool, which is being used to pay commission for people to validate on the chain, which I think is just like completely over the top at the moment. It can be ramped right down. That expenditure could be like halved, and it wouldn't really make too much difference. Everybody would cry about it. The token holders would not like that. But really, like, there's just pure parasitic. There's no added value. There's no benefit to the blockchain of spending, all of these tokens just to get people to come and stake and sit there. Half that expenditure, and the other half use it to fund, entrepreneur in residence sort of programs, hackathons, funding teams with ideas, and it's not even like existing teams. It's not even like mercenary teams who just like hop from blockchain to blockchain and collect a paycheck, because they'll just do the same. They'll just then go to the next place and get another pile of tokens. In this case, it's actually find like some kind of developers with hustle, which can take time, but you need to start. If you don't start, it just won't happen. The alternative, like if you don't want to be a real layer one, right? If you don't want to be a layer one that produces applications and has like some kind of trajectory, like the majority of successful layer ones today, you become what is something like I affectionately call a dino coin. So you become Litecoin, you become Bitcoin Cash, Ethereum Classic. They're all like layer ones. They're all blockchains. They're fine. They run in perpetuity. You can use them to send and receive a coin or a token. There's no specific use case, but they're still worth billions of dollars for some reason, and that's because traders just trade it. So you become like a trading coin. That's kind of like the two routes. The route we're on now is a bit of a confused route, because although it's leaning on developers quite a bit to achieve certain goals, like having parity with Luna 2. I mean, having parity with Luna 2 is just a psyop from LunkDAO Spaces from 6 months ago. Like, I don't think that's actually like a useful target. It's not like the most important, highest priority for the blockchain. It's like, what's the angle? Like, when you get parity, so what? Like, you can still build apps on top of Lunk today, but teams don't want to do it. So it's like, why not? That's the question.
Yeah, thinking about what makes a successful layer one, which is kind of what you were talking about there. I think about market share, and 5 years from now, which blockchains are going to capture it. I mean, I really don't think anything's going to take over Ethereum, but I might be wrong. And there's Binance and there's other ones. Does Lunk have the capability of competing with those types of blockchains, or do you feel that Lunk should probably find its own niche?
Yeah, I think the landscape right now kind of looks like, exactly right. Ethereum is the king. It has the deepest liquidity. It's got the most developers. It's going to be very, very hard to shake that as a smart contract platform. Like no other blockchain's got a good shot of toppling Ethereum anytime soon. So what it becomes is a musical chairs sort of rotation between what's hot and what's sexy. So that's like the second time of chain, which is like the VC speedrun chain. Aptos, Sui, Say, Solana, all of these kind of like funded by Jump and Multicoin and those guys. And they speedrun. They just kind of like, they're the sexy hot new thing. Everybody rushes in through the front door. They do an airdrop or something like that. And then, over a period of a year, they might pump and then grind back down. And that's sort of like another type of blockchain here. I don't think Lunk can compete with those blockchains for attention. And it's certainly not in the near term in terms of attracting capital and attracting liquidity. Like, who from the Lunk blockchain is going to negotiate with Jump to dump $20 million of TVL in? It's not happening anytime soon. So yeah, it is in a unique position, definitely, where the the entire premise of why it's successful and why it's popular now is like a burn meme sort of angle, like small number, a little bit like. So maybe some context on Cardano. I see a lot of comparisons between Cardano and Lunk. So the reason Cardano is somewhat successful, it kind of starts in Japan. So in Japan, you can only trade Bitcoin, Ethereum, and a Cardano on exchanges, or at least you had for the longest time. You're only able to trade those three. And Cardano was the cheapest. It had the smallest number. So people thought, what if that number becomes as big as the Ethereum number or the Bitcoin number? I'm going to buy that. It's the cheapest one. In the same way that people like approach Lunk. It was $120. Now it's 0.00000. I'm going to buy that token just in case it goes up again. So in the same way, you build a community around like Cardano is useless fundamentally. Like, that doesn't work. There's no like particularly interesting teams building on top. It's not interesting from that angle, but it has a big community. And I think there's a lot of things. The ones that actually we do have a charismatic or a spiritual leader. Like Charles Hoskinson is the leader of Cardano. Ed Kim is the spiritual leader of Lunk, a reluctant spiritual leader. And so I think there are probably, like, if you're not going to be in a position to coordinate and fund for teams to build on top of Lunk, the next best thing is to create a cult of personality around Ed Kim, and a cult of personality around like particular large members of the community. And like in the future, one day it will be successful. Like Cardano has this idea, like the carrot dangling is one day Cardano will be extremely successful as, I don't even know, like it's like the most PhDs in a room ever have come together to build like this incredible thing with an insane white paper. And the vision is in the future. Lunk needs like that kind of like sexy, ridiculous vision that makes no sense. That's the niche. Become the next Cardano, I think, is the most realistic roadmap for Lunk.
That is interesting that you say that. Yeah, I mean, I know a little bit more about the business side than the technical side that you're talking on, but I do know that other industries, when industries get saturated with new ideas and people are just recreating the new ideas, then it starts getting more specialized, just like a society, right? Or civilization in general. You had your hunters and gatherers, and then once they started living in cities, people started working specific skilled tasks, and they got and then jobs and things like that. And the infrastructure of the city and civilization got bigger and grew, and people got more specialized. So I think blockchains will follow suit with that, because when you have Ethereum holding such a large market share of what they have, and then Cardano, Solana, like the ones you say, there's going to be some winners and losers. But if you have a niche, you might be able to capture a bigger portion of that market share, because then people will be looking at that specific blockchain. Well, this is what this blockchain does best because it concentrates on this one thing and it specializes in it. So I thought that was very interesting. And think. Did you have any more to add on that?
Yeah, it's a little bit like the app chain thesis that you'll have specific blockchains with specific use cases, um, which is I don't agree entirely with the app chain idea. I think there's only a couple of reasons why you'd want to build a blockchain like separate to one of these large monolithic sort of chains like Ethereum. Um, Ethereum, that you can in theory run. Obviously, you have like all these layer twos built on top, which in theory provides some kind of scalability. The practical reality of those layer twos is they run with one validator, right? When they say, "Oh yes, we have a what do they call it? A sequencer." Oh yes, we have our sequencer. That's just the validator. They just have one. So it's like, yeah, of course it's faster. Of course it's more scalable. You've just compromised entirely on the decentralization piece. So how is this better than Web 2? So like, but fundamentally, there are improvements that you could make to Ethereum in a couple of ways, in a couple of use cases. One is if you look at crypto today, the most prolific, the most useful, probably the one thing that's hit product market fit is exchanging and trading and swapping, because that's fundamental to speculation, which is what crypto is basically built around. So if you can improve on the ability to exchange, then it's probably worth building a new layer one just to facilitate that. So which is kind of like what Solana was getting to. And I think Sui and Sei as well, probably in some to some degree, are building their own chains to address this like exchange piece. Is a better place to and I say better in terms of faster time to finality. Luna Classic, I think, has a 6-second block time, and that's fine to a point, but you're not going to run like the NASDAQ with a 6-second time to finality, right? You're fighting over like the milliseconds, because in a truly efficient market, you have arbitrage opportunities, and the fastest one to get there is going to get the cake, and 6 seconds is a million years. So like exchange is probably one reason to build a new blockchain. I think if you're building a blockchain just to facilitate like an NFT market, you're crazy. Just build your NFT market on another layer one. And the reason for that is then you're composable, like atomically composable with all of the other apps on that blockchain. You don't need to like so IBC has like a huge delay to it. It's like 6 seconds or something. Again, like it's just like impractical. You don't even know if you have the same standards as those other blockchains. So you end up with a silo of NFTs, like, which is of no use to anyone if you can't use those NFTs for other interesting things and sort of benefit from this interoperability, which is like one of the most important parts of DeFi, one of the most important parts of crypto. So specialization, I think, happens with applications, but at the same time, most of the applications that have been built in crypto, which weren't just built around speculation and trading, have just failed horribly. So NFTs, that's just people flipping the profile pictures, and some of them get sucked into like we're a community. I look at this very cynically, but that's just like because of I don't know, seeing them go to one and then back to zero again too many times. But you hold your NFTs, you get told you're in a community, people buy and sell on in the background, speculate, and then at some point it goes to zero. The only case that hasn't happened is, well, to be honest, I think most of these NFTs, Bored Ape, Punks, all this stuff, right now, they've done pretty well. In the long term, let's see. Anyway, then it's all built around speculation, man. So innovating beyond that into like weird other spaces is yet to be proven. So app chain thesis, somewhat doubtful if that makes any sense, but which is kind of me saying Cosmos doesn't make sense, but I don't think that's true either. If you look at like the most successful Cosmos chains were Terra, which is a general purpose chain. Binance Smart Chain is built on Cosmos tech. They don't even talk about Cosmos, but that's a general purpose chain. Osmosis is now Injective. Injective is now the highest market cap Cosmos chain, I think. which in theory is specialized, but it's not really. I think they could probably branch out. So anyway, but you get the point. Like little niche app chains with just like one weird use case are probably useless. That's what I'm trying to say.
So I'm going to ask you an off the wall question. So is there a way to dedicate parts of the blockchain to manipulate how long it takes for a transaction for certain functions, kind of like you would with a computer when you partition a hard drive? And is this something that can be achievable maybe by creating side chains?
So like there are a few things you can change on a blockchain that affect the time to finality, or like the time to execute a trade. So the consensus process, the entire Tendermint is what Luna Classic uses as this consensus mechanism. So all the validators can come to consensus of what's happened, and like you can achieve finality because it's printed on the blockchain forever, and everyone agrees that that's correct. Which takes 6 seconds on most standard blockchain, on most standard Tendermint chains. You can make a few changes to that. You can kind of remix some of the order operations. You can you can look at intelligent block propagation, and you can look at what else we got, optimistic block processing. So just like making changes to that, the consensus mechanism itself, you can speed up the block time. Beyond that, you can add things like parallelization, which is what Solana and Sui and Aptos and a few other chains have got. So by adding parallelization, you can basically just have like multiple things going on at once. That's the simplest way of saying it. You can have multiple exchanges going on simultaneously that don't touch the same, as long as they don't touch the same part of the blockchain. That's the simplest way of putting it. But you probably it probably doesn't make sense to like, that has to be like consistent across the entire chain, because that's so fundamental to like the way that the blockchain achieves consensus. So like the fastest that anyone can process a trade on a chain is probably what everybody would be able to get on that chain. Side chain is an interesting one, because that is a bit of a marketing term. In fact, like if you ask someone what a layer 2 application, a layer 2 blockchain means, it's debatable. Nobody quite knows. We all know that it means you have more scalability. So Polygon marketed themselves as a side chain to Ethereum, when in reality they're just an independent layer 1. It was just a pure marketing ploy so that people who are in the Ethereum ecosystem would be happy that Polygon was launching. There are different ways to sort of like so that's just like a pure marketing play. Layer 2 like rollups are a blockchain that actually uses your underlying layer 1 blockchain for fraud proofs. So there's actually some useful piece to this. There's actually some useful interaction between the layer 2 blockchain, and they might even use your layer 1 token for gas. So you're thinking of Ed Kim's project. So what I would push the Lunk community to say is, hey, Professor Ed Kim, we love your AI blockchain. Why don't you use Lunk for gas and have it as an optimistic roll-up on Lunk that uses Lunk for fraud proofs, in the same way that Arbitrum and Optimism does on ETH? That would be a true way to sort of add utility to the Lunk token and truly benefit. If he runs it with his own layer 1 token, right, it's just a marketing play. So that's one to watch out for.
Well, I'm glad you explained that, because that's hard. I think that's hard to grasp if you don't have somebody like you that can explain it. So I do believe that you covered how Lunk could leverage its position and succeed in the future. But if you have anything more to add on that specific point, go ahead. And if not, we can go to what you think are some major obstacles for future progress.
I think I've said everything that I can possibly say about Lunk succeeding. It's against my nature to talk about that.
Okay, and did you already covered some of the major obstacles too? I mean, I kind of got that, but is there any other obstacles that you see?
Yeah, I think. Well, there are a lot of obstacles. Like the inability to coordinate is the fundamental problem. that stops you. And well, actually, no, the fundamental problem is not actually having a plan at all, or understanding what makes it successful layer one blockchain. That's the fundamental problem. The second fundamental problem is not being able to coordinate in a meaningful way. And so, like, how do you overcome that on Lunk when the vast majority of voices on Twitter are guys who are buying like Lunk on Binance, and maybe this is the first time they've even thought about a blockchain in their lives, but we're all shouting at each other about like what we should be doing next. Unfortunately, like 99% of the people who are tweeting have no concept of what would lead to success. Even like, and this is sort of exemplified by a guy like Zaradar. So Zaradar is probably a really good dev. He's probably an excellent dev. But the difference between Zaradar and Do Kwon is that Do Kwon was like a founder, right? He had like the hustle, he had the vision, he had the pitch, he knew how to spin up a narrative, he knew where this was going next. Whereas Zaradar is a contractor doing a specific job like fixing a fence. So, but then the community sort of venerates the wrong people who aren't going to lead them anywhere in particular, right? That Zaradar's not going to lead you to has he got a history of shipping a successful startup? Probably not. So it's like, who is realistically going to be able to take you like with the right vision to the promised land? And the answer is 0xEars and LunkDAO. LunkDAO and 0xEars can take Lunk to the promised land if everybody just listens to us. Unfortunately, I think LunkDAO's left Lunk now. So we're going to have to skip that specific idea. But I'm still here, and I obviously still care for some reason. So, yeah, I'm not asking for any Lunk here, by the way. That's not what I'm about. What am I saying? The other obstacles, like there's so many. USTC is another obstacle. Stop talking about USTC. I know Redline Drifter's listening, and I do appreciate his proposal. But the fundamental problem of USTC is that in the former situation of UST, you could buy UST under $1 and have confidence that you're going to make a profit. And so it was actually profitable to buy UST for 99 cents, 98 cents, because you could arb it back. If you don't have mint burn, UST doesn't make any sense as an algorithmic stablecoin. And so like trying to figure out how to repeg it is just like a complete waste of time and energy. It's a trader's coin. It's got a big market cap. You could probably use USTC for other things. Since we all seem to hold it, you could probably give it some utilities. You could probably give it, but it's just a random token at this point, and there's no way that it makes any sense to repeg it. It's literally impossible. So that's a big drain. Arguing about whether we should burn tokens or not, that's another big drain. The reason that burns are a good idea is if everybody expects burning to increase the price, they will buy the token if they know a burn is coming. So indirectly, burns can lead to like FOMO, and FOMO leads to positive price action, but that's temporary, that's short-lived. You have to keep the momentum going, and once the momentum's gone, it doesn't work anymore because nobody expects burning to do anything. We've reached that point. We reached that point a long time ago. Burning is useless. Stop. Get rid of burning. It's again just a pure marketing play, and now the momentum's gone. It's a waste of time. And people like to say that burning is a reason people don't want to trade on Lunk and don't want to build apps on Lunk. They might not want. It might be a problem for building apps because you have to like incorporate some weird burn tax logic when you're deploying your smart contracts, which is a pain in the ass. So just remove it entirely and focus on, what is actually going to make Lunk successful. It's not burning. It's not USTC repegging. It could be an AI roll up if that uses the Lunk token, right? That could be like one nice direction. Although I suspect Ed Kim probably would resent me for saying that. That's it. That's all I got for now.
Gotcha. Yeah. Gosh, I had something I was gonna say. I think I forgot my train of thought. But it's all very interesting to say the least. Oh yeah. So crypto is so fast paced compared to so many other technology companies, and crypto has to be agile. So when you say it's slow to move, and I know where you're coming from, do you feel like having some type of centralization while still being decentralized might be a solution? Because I mean, I think these are words that a lot of people don't understand fully what they actually mean. And centralization has become a buzzword for people that want to point at something that's bad. No, that's bad. It's, DeFi, CeFi, they're two different things and stuff like that. But I feel like if we were more agile in decision making, uh, it would probably work out for the best. What do you think about that?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. In a startup, you need to make decisions quickly and pivot quickly, otherwise it doesn't work. So it's about like what decisions need to be made quickly. And well, the problem we've got is that a team did try and achieve like some kind of centralization, some kind of like monopoly over a small amount of funds. The L1 task force has almost got there, almost. But what you're going to find is that the degree of like ownership of lunk tokens that's required in order for them to like make deals and run the right programs and sort of like move and get this thing moving in the right way, they won't be able to achieve. And the reason for that is the Oracle pool is the only tokens that they could feasibly get, and that's the pool that's funding staking and commission for validators. So it's not in the interests of validators and people who are staking for the layer one task force to get a ton of those tokens. At least, like, it's a risk for them. It might be in their interest, but it's a risk for them. They'd rather sit and earn juicy yield forever for doing very little. So I actually think it's impossible to centralize Lunk at this point. So it's about what decisions do need to be made quickly. And if that's like funding, that's why the Terra Grants Foundation is a good idea. Because if you give like Ed Kim a pile of Lunk tokens to dish out to like good projects, then you've just expedited like the one decision that needs to be made quickly, really, and the only decision that matters in the short term for Lunk. But I don't think he's actually funded anything. So maybe Ed Kim is a fine leader, but again, does he know what a successful blockchain project looks like? And the answer is probably no. He's probably a very good AI professor and understands how blockchains work. But does he understand the business of developing applications and what makes a successful blockchain project? I don't think he does. So that is another piece in understanding the Lunk puzzle.
Yeah, I hear you there. So you had a bit of a voice over the last I don't know, couple weeks about a particular project that had a hack recently. So I figured we'd touch on that because you've been pretty vocal about that from before it even happened. You noticed some things, and you were pretty loud about it. So why don't we start at the beginning of when you started noticing things about Terraport that kind of made you feel uneasy about it?
Yeah. And yeah, and for the record, I never foresaw what happening. I just didn't like the project's design and approach, but I didn't see a rug or hack or whatever you want to call it coming. That surprised me. So I guess the first time thinking about Terraport was when someone mentioned like, hey, this is sort of weird like Discord sale going on where you can buy tokens 1-to-1 from a sales rep. And I said, oh yeah, sounds like a scam, man. sounds sus. So I read the white paper and I went, okay, cool. This was like written in a cardboard box without any kind of input from anybody who's ever built a DEX before. Let's just write a thread about it and just like in the interests of like the guys, because you've got to remember the people who are in their Discord are probably, for the most part, just, again, like people who have no idea what a good investment looks like, no idea what a good DEX looks like, no idea how a DEX works. So in the interests of some sort of like fairness, writing a thread about like things I didn't like about the white paper and things I didn't like about the way the sale was carried out, because there are just like a ton of weird red flags there. Having worked in crypto, you know a few things are red flags, like selling tokens one-to-one with random retail investors without knowing anything about them, without knowing if they're from North Korea, right? Like you're just like, there's just like due diligence. So I didn't like that. So I wrote a thread. And that's kind of where that started. I thought there were enough red flags through the whole process that it was probably going to be sketchy. I was surprised about how well the token did. And I think that's because I was mid-curving a little bit. And when I say mid-curve, middle of the bell curve, the potential for, like there's nothing else for people to do on chain with their lunk apart from stick it in this liquidity pool. So if there's literally nothing else for people to do, and this seems to be a thing that's happening, then sure, why not? Let's buy some Terra tokens. The other thing that I thought was really smart, I don't know if they did this intentionally or not, was to have a endless flat plane for the price chart. So even if there was a dip, no one would know anyway, because there's no red candles. So seemingly it just seems to be creeping up forever and ever. So I thought that was quite smart, whether, again, intentional or not. But yeah, and then waking up the other day and the things rugged, or all of the liquidity has been drained from all of the liquidity pools. That was I wouldn't say it was a surprise, but I was certainly extremely disappointed. And the reason I was extremely disappointed is because the team has gone ahead, obviously, and deployed shit code. And they haven't got it checked. They haven't got the audits done properly. And that is extremely irresponsible. Like, however that they spin it, like, oh, we're victims. Not a chance. Zero chance. The Terraport team are not victims. They built a house made out of wood, and then they filled the kitchen with gas and left a pack of matches on the counter. In fact, they probably chucked the match through the window, right? Like, they invited everybody in and they blew up the house. So like it's just extremely irresponsible. And that to me is just like so frustrating, incredibly frustrating. I can't express how angry I was with that team for basically luring in a ton of innocent, sort of unaware retail investors. Just like the words of confidence, like, yes, we know what we're doing, don't worry about it. And then the whole thing exploding. Just, yeah.
Now, I don't think it's a coincidence that it happened on Easter Sunday. At least that's what I'm told. I wasn't invested myself. How many times in the past has a project rugged or been exploited on a holiday? I mean, it's happened before, right?
On a holiday, I wouldn't know. I don't know. It's certainly like a good idea to do it when no one's paying attention, for sure. So like the least number of people paying attention would be a Sunday night, like on a holiday weekend, when people are either drunk or asleep or not working or just like not paying attention, or with family. Yeah, that's the time. That's the time to run it. But
so maybe it's not a coincidence.
Well, no, it was definitely planned, 100%. Whoever did this was planning it, clearly, because you don't just. So maybe I should explain like how a DEX works, how an AMM pool works.
Yeah, let's do that.
So the key here is, so everybody knows how Binance works. You have an order book. You have people on the buy and the sell, the bid, and on the selling side of the order book, and they can place orders, limit orders, and somewhere in the middle they get matched, and the latest price is sort of printed on the chart, which is the ideal way to run an exchange, because it's just like the most efficient way to run an exchange with the least amount of liquidity. Because all of the liquidity is sort of bundled up around like the settled price. Like you don't have to have this weird sort of curve, which we'll get onto. But unfortunately, you can't run that on many chains. You can't run it on Ethereum, for example. You can't run it on Luna Classic, because the time to finality is too slow. You have to pay gas for every single transaction. You can't do high frequency trading on these blockchains. So what you end up with is this idea of an automated market maker. And all that is actually incredibly simple. You have two pools of tokens, maybe it's Lunk and Terra. You have a ratio of how many of each type of tokens in there, and you have something called a constant product curve. So it's the number of token A times by the number of token B equals a constant, and that constant remains the same. So if you take out some Lunk tokens, you have to put in a certain number of Terra tokens, so it remains balanced, and so that constant remains the same. So the problem with that is it's quite inefficient, but anyone in their grandma can add liquidity very easily, right? It's much easier than placing limit orders just to dump a bunch of tokens into some pools. So fundamentally, what the point is here, what I'm trying to get to, is that people add liquidity to that pool, and they have a claim on that liquidity. They've added it. They've got some LP tokens. Happy days. Somebody came and took all of the liquidity from everybody that had a claim on that liquidity. They took all of it, and that was due to a fault in the code. So whether that was like put in there at the start or something was exploited later on, I'm not sure. Well, somewhat sure, but we'll wait to be proven there. I think a lot of people have pointed to like hard-coded addresses in the initial smart contract, which is a very, very high, a very, very probabilistic indication that somebody just rugged this from the start. Whoever wrote the contracts rugged this. But either way, it was planned, because they then took everybody's liquidity from these pools on both sides, and then they sent it to a centralized exchange, which is really stupid, because now those people in the centralized exchange, like if you send it to a KYC'd account with the memo, they know who you are, and they can freeze those tokens because they can freeze your account. So was it planned? Yes. Was it irresponsible by the team? Yes. Was it a rug? Probably. That's basically the TLDR on this whole fucking stupid situation. Oh, and the last piece, were the hackers stupid? Yes.
Well, it's all unfortunate. I mean, I think there's a lot of people in the community upset about it. That's for sure. And it's a huge amount too. I was told 4 million. I was told 5 million. Do you know the exact amount that was exploited?
So the way to work out that is, the value of the Lunk and the USTC, which is about $2 million. That the value of the Terra tokens is purely determined by like how many Lunk and USTC they're pooled with, because you can't trade it anywhere else. So to me, they're valueless. I would say 2 million is the size of the rug, because implicitly the Terra token has no value at this point.
Gotcha. Okay. Now you mentioned you're not that excited about Cosmos chains, but are there any other promising chains besides Luna, which ended up turning into Lunk, on the Cosmos? I know that you might be involved in 2.0 as well, but which chains are doing the best on the Cosmos right now, and which ones do you like?
Yeah. So I like chains that have teams that can operate in the right way and guide the project in the right direction and pick up on narratives, and move quickly. So the projects that I like Say, I like Injective. that might be it. Let me think here. Yeah. No, I think that's it. I don't think Luna 2 is like Luna 2 is a bet on Do Kwon, and Do Kwon is unfortunately in a Montenegro prison. So
So
I'm not
what
too
you
bullish
said,
there.
injective, and what was the other one?
Sei, SEI.
SEI. Okay. And have you heard of the new one called Whale token?
Oh, the Migaloo chain. Yeah, I know Sebastian, funnily enough, from White Whale, but don't tell him I said that. Um, yeah, no, I'm not. I'm not too bullish on that chain because I don't understand what it's for. They seem to launch it out of nowhere with no kind of um, understanding of how to hype it up or market it. And will it do fine? I don't know. Maybe it might do fine. It might not. But there's no particular reason I think to think it will do like exceedingly well. I don't see any reason to think it will outperform.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Well, I think we covered all our points. Or is there anything else you want to add?
Yeah. I guess I don't know. FUD is a good thing. FUD is a good thing, and I'll tell you why FUD is a good thing. Because the amount of FUD about your project is proportional to the amount that people care about your project. So the less people are FUDing, the less relevant your shit is. And I'm trying my best to FUD Lunar Classic as hard as I can, and it really is kind of procrastination as much as anything else. But yeah, just remember that like the day people stop FUDing and stop arguing is the day that no one cares. So that's a sad day. I think it's much better that it's a telenovela than just like dead.
I guess I think you're right because there seems to be a dichotomous relationship with hype and FUD.
Yeah. Um, Look at if you're familiar with the Aptos launch, people fudded the shit out of that. They hated it, and it was objectively like pretty poorly communicated launch. But it's what $16 billion market cap, so and it's got no apps. It's got no apps. It's got no TVL. It's just like it's got the right narrative. It's got the right amount of people caring about it, and it's got the right backers, and that's it. That's all that matters.
Well, 0xEars, it's been wonderful having you on the podcast. I want to thank you for coming in. I want to thank everybody who's listening. This is recorded, so you can always go back to it if you missed out on it. And the next one is going to be not too long from now, tomorrow with Redline Drifter. I'm not sure if he's still in the house, but 0xEars, go ahead. You can have the final say.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for coming. I'd like to close on a reminder that Lunk is totally dead. USDC cannot be repegged. The chain is run by buffoons, and none of you know what a good layer one project looks like. Thank you.
All right, again, thanks, 0xEars, for being here, 0xEars. And we do have Lunk Dow coming on probably in less than 2 weeks, I hope. He's right there, so we'll talk when he's less busy. Okay, everybody take care. We'll see you next time.